Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 80. That's 8 times 10 of Mythos Busters. I'm Sean. Joining me tonight, we got a little bit of a reduced crew. Due to sickness and family obligations, it's me and Scott. Hey, Scott.
Hello.
Just the two of us.
We can make it if
chopped liver over here.
Oh, Matt, I was going to drop you in as a surprise. It's fine. All right.
Well, too late.
Well, the proverbial cat is out of the bag now. We are joined tonight by a very special guest and friend of the show, Matt Newman. Hey, Matt.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to keep talking over you, apparently.
Well, that's just how this works. Sadly,
yeah.
Due to the quarantine, I wasn't able to have Matt in my house for this recording, which is a first for me, and I'm kind of sad about it because I do like seeing his pretty face.
Thank you.
But yeah,
it is more fun when we're together.
It truly is. It's
How are you going to stroke his beard from so far away?
Well, the beard is gone.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Oh, I thought you were talking about mine. I'm like,
Beard's
yeah,
been
damn
gone
it,
for
how?
months.
That too. Yeah, that's totally what I meant. Whoops.
All right. Well, we've got obviously a very special episode for you guys tonight. We're going to run through our normal openers. There was a very, very fun announcement that I thought was going to be delayed again, but luckily it wasn't. And boy, it was as much of a doozy as we were all hoping for. So we'll cover that. And then we're going to talk to Matt. In general, and probably more specifically about some of the most recent scenarios, and we're probably going to focus a decent amount on the Dream Eaters and the campaigns started therein. And then, of course, we'll round it out with some technical time.
I assume we'll talk about Arkham Horror, the card game.
It's a decent bet. We might get to it.
Yeah,
I'm hoping so. Have you played much, Matt? Or
I've never heard of it.
Familiar with? Oh, okay. Well,
this is the first I've heard of it.
Interesting. This could be a great show.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Welcome to the newbie episode of Mythos Busters. This is a great place to start. So before we get into any of that, though, I just want to throw a quick reminder out there to anyone who's listening to this, possibly for the first time. We record all of our episodes live on our Discord. So if you feel like coming in and commenting and haggling, or just, being a part of the chaotic magic that is our recordings, please join our Discord, discord.me/mythosbusters. Or if you want an invite, just message us at our email or our Facebook. So, guys, let's do our regular check-in, though. What have y'all been playing lately? Matt?
I can't tell you.
Damn it!
If I told you, I'd have to kill you.
It's worth a shot.
That was a good try, Sean.
Yeah, nice.
I'm proud of you.
Good.
Scott, how about you?
Well, I have that solo Ursula campaign going through the Dream Side, and I finished the Search for Kadath, which went swimmingly. I finished with 4 Doom left on the second agenda, and I got 9 Signs of the Gods and 13 XP.
Damn.
Yeah, the only sign I didn't get was the one. Is it the Forbidden Lands where the what's it called? The Chupacabra or whatever, the big lion thing.
The Stalking Manticore.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the same word.
Yeah,
close.
The Chupacabra.
Yeah, that magical beast.
Same thing.
So I was able to knock him out with I've got a plan, but then the test on the location he's at is test 2 agility, 3 strength, and
it's do a bunch of tests in a row.
Yeah, and Ursula just is not good at 2 of those, and I was like, I could spend time here, but I'm just not gonna. I'm gonna accept this as something I can't do. And then looking back, because I finished with 3 or 4 Doom left, I was like, man, I could have just sat there for a couple turns and just draw cards till I have enough wild icons to maybe pass. But yeah, so halfway through that, and I have 24 XP now into my Ursula deck, and it's just about to start the Dark Side of the Moon. I'm really excited about that. So, but this the quarantine's putting a little hamper on my Arkham times. So unfortunately, that is all I've played.
Not all that you've played though, because you and
That's
I
a lie.
had a game.
Yes, we did.
So if you haven't seen, we haven't uploaded it to YouTube yet. I need to get on that after we record tonight. On our Twitch channel, Scott and I continued our Skids and Daisy campaign through Return to the Night of the Zealot with as many side quests as we can cram in. This week, the very special jaunt to the farthest reaches of the Arkham universe was to the Constellation on the Consternation.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, no, strike that. Reverse it.
The Consternation on the Constellation.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So we finally have a playthrough of our custom scenario out on our channel. Shame on us as content producers for it taking that long. So if you're interested in checking that out, again, it's all the files are available for free on our website. Anyone who wants to print and play it can go do that. And then you can check it out on YouTube. Should be up well before this episode is recorded or is edited and released. It was a good game. There was some tense moments.
There was.
I gotta go back and watch that.
It's pretty fun. We actually made a live on-stream errata to our own scenario, where we errated it to not cost XP because we were tired of paying XP for side scenarios.
Because I like to buy cards for my deck, and it wasn't going that way.
Yeah, and we'd had a rough couple goes, and I figured, like, the hotel just murdered us twice. And
see what you did there.
Yeah, so yeah, it was a really fun game.
Yeah, so go check that out. And then the other campaign I have going on. So when the Black Cat came out, the ally, the Black Cat, I looked at it long and hard and wondered what kind of deck it wants to go in. And started thinking about it, so I wanted to start up a new campaign, try to figure out what deck it goes in. I was kind of spitballing with Scott on Discord. Initially, I thought Mateo. Then I was like, no, but he actually wants to see his Elder Sign, so it's going to be like a weird conflict and, blah, blah, blah. And Scott was like, well, what about Jim? I'm like, well, what about Jim? So just make all of the special symbols like moot. Cool, let's do this. So I built a deck. I call it my Catman Jim deck. And I paired it up with a Daisy similar to the one I'm running with Scott and Skids. And then the question came, all right, well, what campaign is this really going to work in? So I thought, okay, well, Jim's really good in Carcosa to begin with because he's got all the skulls. And then Carcosa's also got that cool, like, as far as the tokens go, it's got a really cool thing where, you're swapping in the double tokens, between scenarios, so you can kind of like more accurately, I think, do kind of the token manipulation type mechanics, or so I thought. So I started that campaign. It's been pretty fun because the deck itself is really just kind of a basic Jim with kind of a few extra tricks. It's got, calling in favors and obviously the Black Cat once I purchased it. But it stands on its own. The thing I found, though, is that when you want to actually have the Black Cat do something, since the Black Cat only works against Tablet and Elder Thing tokens, that actually, like, precludes some of your story choices in Carcosa. And what I found is that all of my instincts and all of the things that I wanted to have happen add cultists to the Chaos bag. So here I am, like, halfway into the campaign with the goddamn Black Cat, and I can't get it to actually work. So I've wrapped up Return to the Unspeakable Oath before we started recording tonight, and I'm making the executive decision just to nix this campaign and build the decks and play some standalones because the decks work. I just made the wrong call in the campaign, but yeah.
And one thing I'd like to point out too is we often, well, not often, but sometimes you see players talking and chatting about the game, and they're like, "Oh, I just lost Unspeakable Oath. I'm ending this campaign because their person goes insane." I think this is the first time I've ever heard someone say, "I was successful at Unspeakable Oath. I'm ending this campaign."
It was the first Unspeakable Oath. Better end.
Yeah. Well, I'm
better stop here. It's only going to go downhill from here.
Yeah, they were discharged and they lived happily ever after.
Yeah, that's how it usually works in Arkham, right?
And they never went to France. Yeah.
So, we'll report back on how the standalones go next time because I have a feeling I'm going to feel a little bit more of the worth of the Black Cat in some standalones where especially the Elder Things, get real nasty.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you should take it through Forge Your Own Path, TFA.
Ooh.
With all the sealing.
Yeah. You can also take it through Dunwich and just make all of the choices that add
all
tokens.
The bad choices.
Yeah, like all the bad choices. Like let the students die, take the Necronomicon, like all that stuff.
Just get the real dirty bag going.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, both very tantalizing choices. We'll see where I go with it. Cool. So, let's then just remind one other housekeeping reminder out there. If you haven't seen it already, during Quarantine Con 2020, we are hosting a Mythos Busters scavenger hunt, audio scavenger hunt. So you can check out our website, mythosbusters.com, for more information. But basically, there's a few different cues that you'd want to go back through an episode or two of, in our back catalog. Send us a timestamp for these things that you're trying to find in an episode, and you'll be entered into a drawing to win some of our cool swag. We've got a bunch of test swag from the website, and there's some pretty cool stuff. Mm-hmm. So go check that out and let us know. All right, so then moving through to our patron news. As always, of course, we'd like to thank our board members, Chris B, Chris H, Chris U, our conglomeration of Chris's, Morton, Jared, Ian, Kyle, Philip, Dave, Abilio, Nathan, Chad, and Robert. Thanks, guys, for keeping us up and going. Special shout out to our random patron this week is to Chris Steele. Thank you, Chris, for your friendship and your patronage.
Another Chris.
Oh, God. We're going to add a fourth head to the conglomeration.
Oh. We must have hit it with a melee weapon and it absorbed it.
Didn't someone add a new nickname for the conglomeration of spheres into our Discord recently? Like, if you modify the card search?
Like with the bot?
Yeah.
The stand bot?
Yeah. That was fun. And then, of course, our patron exclusive... God, wow. I swear I'm not drunk yet. Our patron exclusive merch is now unlocked, so we announced that today. So for anyone at the middle manager level or above, go check that out. It's on our social media. There are a couple items that, unfortunately, due to all of the complications with production due to COVID, there are a couple things that are going to be on hold for a little bit of a later release, but there are items up there now, so go check those out. And of course, this is our bi-weekly reminder that we edge ever closer to the dreaded tattoo, though of course at the same time ever farther, because who knows when tattoo artists will be cleared to open up again.
Oh yeah.
So God. It's gonna happen though. I've already got kind of finalized ideas for the design, so we'll let the patrons kind of narrow it down between the two, and then everyone gets...
Is that going to be your excuse when you hit the goal? You're going to be like, oh, sorry, I can't. They're still not open.
No, I won't blink. I won't flinch. I'll walk right in and get my tentacle tattoo right on my cheek.
Face cheek?
Yeah, sure, that.
Well, okay.
Oh, my.
All right. So then, Scott, let's move into the news.
Yeah, so Quarantine Con 2020 was started by Brian David Sandberg of Right of Seeking blog, rightofseeking.com. He meant it to last a week, but people have just kind of been keeping the content flowing, including ourselves. So I don't see any reason why not to just keep Quarantine Con 2020 going until... God, I hope it's not 2021.
Until we're no longer quarantined.
Yeah. We've put out some new series on the Mythos Busters RSS. So Ian has Abandoned and Alone audio podcasts on there where he's playing solo. I believe he's taking Calvin through Return to Carcosa.
That's accurate.
Nice.
Okay. And then the other one is Nick. He started Achievement Hunter, where he's going to basically go through the return sets and try to see how many campaigns it takes him to get all the achievements in each return set. So currently he is working his way through Return to Night of the Zealot, and he thinks he can do them all in 2 campaigns. So, Matt, do you think that is possible? Do you remember much of the achievements? Some of them are brutally hard.
I mean, some of them are fairly easy, and some of them are ridiculously hard. They really range the gambit from like totally achievable without even trying to you have to really, really specifically go after them. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously on purpose.
Yeah.
So it might a lot of the achievements are designed so that you kind of have to play it over and over because that's the goal, right? It's to improve the replayability of the product. So, but I'm looking forward to seeing how he does.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. He's basically he goes through all of them and he puts them into campaigns. So if two of them contradict each other, like one of them is like leave the ghoul priest alive, or one of them is kill the like I forget how it works, but he's like
one of them is like complete Night of the Zealot without killing a single ghoul. That's
it, yeah. And one of them is without killing a cultist, but in the other one it's like you have to kill the ghoul priest at this guy's location. Like it's impossible. So he's figured out you could, if you have a perfect run, you can do it in 2 campaigns. And so he's built two investigator decks specifically for those campaigns, and he's going to play them through. So should be interesting.
Good luck.
Yeah, one of them just sounds not achievable at all. But who doesn't like to watch people thrash around? The other thing we have is there is a group of players putting on a worldwide blob game. So they had a test game, I think it was today. So they set up a Discord server and they had 23 players on 7 different tables. But the software that they're using can easily handle 700. I'm not sure if that's players or tables, but I mean either or. They had players from New Zealand, Germany, Spain, Belgium, UK, and the US. They were done in 2 hours. They have a Discord bot that you actually report to, like clues and countermeasures and all that stuff.
That's smart.
Yeah, and they plan to do it again
Smart.
On a bigger scale. For the comfort of your home. I know some people were playing digitally, some people were playing, like, they just had a group of friends at a tabletop and just had, I don't know, a microphone. I assume that not too many people at a table because of coordinating. But anyways, so they plan to do it again on April 11th. There's a link in our show notes if you want to join that server and join in that. So that just sounds amazing to me. Like, what an awesome thing to do while we're all locked down. So
that's really a testament to like what this community can achieve. You know?
Yeah, absolutely awesome.
If someone wanted to get involved in such a thing, Scott, what would be their best venue to get in on it?
Joining the Discord server. So there's not really a way for me to easily... The Discord server is small enough, it doesn't get its own, what do you call it, URL. Like it's discord.gg/QDZPKKA. But the link will be in our...
That's easy to remember.
Yeah, I know. Just rolls off the tongue. It will be in our show notes, and you know what? I'll pin it somewhere on Discord. So if you join our Discord, discord.me/mythosbusters, go to Quarantine Con. We have a special channel for that. I'll pin it up at the top, so you can just grab the link from there. Lastly, AV Club is back. We talked about this last time. Bit of a new direction. Sean and I just recorded one recently. Just got to get that edited and out on the RSS. So if you're not subscribed to the Miskatonic AV Club RSS, head there.
Yeah, I'm excited to publish that one. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart.
I already have my next topic.
Ooh, wonderful.
For our discussion. It's a crunchy one. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Crunchy.
By the way, if you hear a squeaky cat chime in from time to time, that's my cat. Whenever I'm talking on a headset or something, she thinks I'm talking to her, so she likes to chime in. So, just letting you know.
We're happy to have her. That's the real black cat, right?
She's not black. She's long.
We never ever would have known, Matt. You could have just lied to us, and it would have been fine.
Lied. Well, the people who know would know.
That is true.
I posted a video of her actually just earlier before we started on my Twitter.
Oh, that's what that was. Okay, I'll have to go watch that then.
Yeah, that's what that is. Yep.
All right, and Scott, let's get to the big announcement.
What?
The big news.
Was there an announcement?
Was there something happening?
The product announcement?
Oh,
you guys are making me feel like I'm crazy here.
Oh, was there a stream or something that happened with a person who's on the show?
Thank God. Fucking, you played it so straight.
Oh.
Come on.
Yeah, I guess there was some sort of stream. FFG announced a product about the game or something. Matt, do you want to talk about what you released? Kind of putting you on the spot here.
I don't know. I already talked about it on the live stream. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so we're doing, if you didn't see the stream, you can go on YouTube, FFG Live on YouTube and check it out. And we talk all about it there for a while. But basically, we're doing 5 Investigator starter decks. Each one is a different Investigator, 3 of which are brand new to the IP. The other 2 are new to the game. And all of them are mono-class Investigators that are basically a pre-built deck, and all of the not all of the, but a bunch of upgrades for that deck so that you can take that deck through a campaign, and basically you don't need any other product but the scenario that you're playing. So if you have a group that plays and you want to join them but you don't want to use their cards, it's a perfect entry point to the game. You can just pick this up, and then you don't need to go through the rigmarole of going through their collection and finding cards to use and whatnot. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And if you're a veteran player, it's just a huge amount of new cards that we're adding to the game. Like almost a full cycle's worth of new player cards.
So many cards.
It's so many cards.
I'm so excited.
We've been busy.
and whenever they do come out, because I know there's delays with China and stuff like that, you guys are dropping them all at once, right? Like it's not like 1 month each pack kind of thing. Like it's just boom, here it is.
Yes, they are all. It is the month between Return to Forgotten Age and the Innsmouth box, where you're just going to see all 5 of them launch at the same time.
That's a lot of player cards all at once.
It's a lot of player cards, yeah. But feel free to pick up the one that's your favorite, and the rest will still be around. Hopefully, when you want to pick up the rest.
Sorry, I
wouldn't count on that.
What?
Well, we'll see how well they do, right?
You mean pick up one and not all of them? I'm sorry, I don't understand. Like,
sorry, you mean like pick up a whole set, and then if you really like one, pick up a second copy, right?
Sure. Yeah. There you go. Well, if you're using it as an entry point, then I don't think you need to pick up all 5. Pick up the one that interests you the most, and then later on, if you're like, yeah, I like this game, then pick up more.
Though I highly doubt someone using this as an entry point is probably listening to this show.
I mean, yeah, maybe not.
But yes.
But this could be good information for you to give to your friends who haven't started playing yet. So, there you go.
So I think we probably want to talk a little bit. There's a ton of cards to talk about here. We've been doing this all night if we want to. But we should talk a little bit about the Investigators, right? These are...
Well, we have those later on in our main Tupac, if you want to...
Oh, we do? Okay.
Yeah.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
Yeah, Sean,
well, I mean...
if you could pump the brakes here.
It's like the next thing that we talk about is our main topic, though, so there's that. Who's stupid now, guys? All right.
I could answer, but I'm a guest.
You've been around long enough to know. All right, so
Chad is clamoring for Stella's signature.
Yeah, I think Matt was about to tell us Stella's signature. Yeah, I don't know where you got that from. Didn't you get enough spoilers? Jeez.
Oh my god.
We spoiled like 30 cards.
Yeah, that was spoiler overload.
Oh my goodness. There are people like, I need time to process this.
Yeah.
I want to go home and think about my life.
Yeah.
All right, so, Matt, we've got you here. Obviously, we want to drill you with hard-cutting, journalistic-level questions about Arkham Horror, the card game, and hopefully you'll go home exhausted tonight.
I'm already home.
Oh, right. Damn.
In fact, I can't leave.
This fell apart so quickly.
Yeah.
So, I suppose let's just hop into it. So the first thing I think we wanted to talk about was... which I believe is going to be the next release, is Return to Forgotten Age, right? Aside from Weaver of Dreams.
Correct.
So as far as... I know we have to kind of skirt around talking about very specific things for unreleased products, but in your opinion, kind of this being... what, the third return box?
Fourth?
How sweeping are the changes in this one?
I would say they're... Yeah. I would say they're more than what we did for Carcosa. Okay. And probably about on the same level as Dunwich. Possibly more. It kind of depends on the scenario. Oftentimes, what I tend to do is, if a scenario receives lots and lots and lots of positive feedback, I won't make a ton of changes because why fix what isn't broken? And that's kind of how I felt about the whole of Carcosa. Carcosa is a very beloved campaign, and I think a lot of people loved it. So A lot of the changes there were mostly just to improve replayability and kind of change things up a little bit, so that if you're used to the scenario, you might get like a quick twist and you're like, oh wow, that's different from usual. But with Return to Forgotten Age, we definitely changed a lot of the fundamentals, I would say, of the campaign. So I won't go into it more than that, but I think if you liked Forgotten Age, you're going to really like it. If you hated Forgotten Age, you're probably going to really like it. Hopefully.
I don't think anyone hated Forgotten Age.
No. It was...
I mean, it's up to you. I think it's actually probably like one of my favorite campaigns story-wise. I absolutely love it. There are definitely some things that I totally get when people were like stuck at expedition camp and just can't leave because they failed to explore 4 times in a row or whatever. And I'm like, I get it. Mm-hmm. I get it. I got you, fam. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Matt, when you get into these doing these return tos, and not necessarily specifically to Return to Forgotten Age, but in general, how do you choose which of the player cards get an upgrade? Because we usually get about, I think, 10 cards that have
usually like 2 per class.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is ideas that I had for upgrades or downgrades for certain cards that I just wasn't able to fit in the original product, so they'll just be in our database at work, we just have a whole bunch of cards sitting in a folder that will never see the light of day because we can only have so many cards in a product. So I'll pull from those first if I had ideas already. And then beyond that, sometimes it's a pattern. Like I like to introduce a new form of any Seeker card that was like an unidentified card, because I think it's always fun to get more of those. And then beyond that, maybe I'll find a card that didn't see a lot of play and create a new upgrade or downgrade for it so that all of a sudden people see that card in a new light. That sort of thing. Or just a beloved card that people really liked, you know?
Right on. So, last question: on a scale from 0 to Samuel L. Jackson, how many more snakes do we need to fear on this mother flippin' plane?
I mean, it wouldn't be Forgotten Age without snakes, right?
Oh, God.
So I would say on a scale of 0 to Samuel L. Jackson, you're probably looking at an Harrison Ford level of snakes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's better than a Mace Windu level.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I don't know whether to be terrified or aroused.
Both.
Check.
All right.
And check. Yeah.
Yep. And well, I was about to ask something about the secret level, but that would make it not so secret anymore. So we'll skip that.
What secret level? What are you talking about?
Well, I'm sorry. Sorry I said anything.
Don't know what you're talking about.
So the Dream Eaters.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Let's talk the Dream Eaters. This is interesting because this is the first time we've had you on to talk about a campaign prior to the campaign actually officially being closed.
That's true.
I've not really finished it. I've finished the Dream
part A
side.
is done.
Yeah, part A is done. So we won't get to talk about everything. So spoiler alert for anyone out there listening. We're talking about basically anything that's released at this point. So, earmuffs if you prefer not.
Spoiler level yellow.
Yeah, at least orange.
Is that what it is?
Spoiler level purple, I think, is what we're at this point. So, as always, I want to open up kind of talking about the cycle is how did you land on the setting here? So why did you pick the Dreamlands?
So I think pretty early on in the Arkham LCG development, I listed out a bunch of different, potential campaigns, and like their themes and like what stories they might be based off of, the setting, where you might go, that sort of thing. And one of the ones that interested me the most, in fact, so much that I actually wanted it to be Cycle 2, was the Dreamlands, because the Dreamlands is such an awesome setting and such an awesome part of facet of the lore. And my idea for that campaign was that there would be 2 groups, one of which would be asleep in the Dreamlands, and the other which would be awake and trying to figure out the mystery of the Dreamlands and rescue their friends. And we kind of put that one on the sidelines because it was a bit complicated for campaign number 2. And also the Dreamlands is kind of a weird setting for campaign number 2. The Dreamlands is often touted as a completely different style of writing from Lovecraft. It's barely It's maybe only like 50% cosmic horror and then 50% just like fantasy adventure, right? So we kind of put that one on the sidelines, and then later on, I wanted to do like a mini campaign or something like that. And I returned to this idea. I was like, oh, I could do 2 mini campaigns, and it's still the same, release model, but all of a sudden everything's split into 2, and you could kind of go back and forth between them. So, and then you could just do side A or side B by itself if you wished. So it just kind of was a perfect marriage of this theme that I wanted to do and this mechanic that I wanted to include.
So one question I always love to ask, and I'm not sure who started it, if it was us or that other podcast that we have a blood feud with, but you've mentioned multiple times having a feelings board at the office.
Yeah.
What were the feelings for Dream Eaters, if you remember?
Yeah, so for Dream Eaters, again, kind of based on the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath story and the Dream Cycle stories, I wanted to inspire this sense of like awe and wonder and marvel at the setting of the Dreamlands, at least especially for Campaign A, where you're in like the surface of the Dreamlands for the most part, where like previous campaigns were all about the horror. This one's got a sense of like whimsy too. It's weird, it's magical. It's not just horrifying, and obviously there's horrifying aspects to it, but there's more to it than just that. There's like majestic landscapes and weird things and like talking cats and zoogs and beasts that would show up in like a fantasy novel, and so all of those moods are present. There's like a bit more comedy even too, with like the black cat acting really aloof and kind of funny at times, and Virgil just being a very kind of whimsical sidekick who isn't really scared of what's going on and is more like, oh, this will be a great chapter in my story, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that I would say that those are all the moods that we wanted to hit. And then for Campaign B, maybe a bit more traditional Arkham horror with giant spiders and the creepy hospital infested with underworld creatures, and then the underworld itself just being really kind of oppressive atmosphere.
Yeah, those feelings definitely came through. I
Yeah,
think it's
I
pretty
wanted
safe
the
to
two
say
campaigns
that
to feel.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I wanted the two campaigns to feel really distinct from one another.
They
so that
do.
if you played one and then played the other, instead of going through one at a time, if you played one and then like swapped over and played the other one, you'd be like, whoa, this is what you were doing the whole time? Oh, geez. That was totally different.
Yeah, and I'd say the web campaign, the Web of Dreams campaign, is harder.
Mm-hmm.
Is that pretty safe to say? Was that an intent?
I think that. Yeah, well, I wouldn't 100% say that it started off that way, but pretty quickly on, I ended up embracing that because I thought, all right, if we're gonna have two mini campaigns and people are gonna want to play these as mini campaigns, I want the two to have different difficulty levels because I want one to feel like, I really want to challenge. Let's do Web of Dreams, or if you want maybe a slightly easier experience, you could go the Dream Quest instead. And I also wanted them to feel like at any point the difficulty could swing wildly. That way, if you're playing them with two groups, you might have one group that's like really suffering and they need the black cat on their side, so you send the black cat over to them, and then all of a sudden the opposite happens and you're like, oh, we're really in trouble. What, can we have the black cat this time? And you're like, yeah, that's what.
No.
No, we need him.
He's great on this side. Don't worry about it.
And the black cat just like looks really proud of himself. Yeah. And people are fighting over him.
Matt, do you have a side of the campaign that you enjoy playing more than the other?
That's really tough because I think my favorite scenarios in each campaign are kind of go back and forth. Like I really like the Search for Kadath, but I also really like the Weaver of Dreams, which isn't out yet, or Weaver of the Cosmos, I believe. So I don't know if there's if campaign A or campaign B is my favorite per se, but there are specific scenarios that I absolutely love.
Right.
Yeah. So,
aside from Luke, how did you land on which investigators you'd include in this box set? Because I assume Luke was just had to be in this.
Yeah. Luke was like Lola and Carcosa. It was like, all right, we're doing Dreamlands. I gotta have Luke. I mean, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the other ones, some of them were mechanically, it just made sense to include them. Like, for example, Mandy. I knew we were doing the Myriad cards, and I thought Mandy would be a perfect fit to go with Myriad because sometimes you want to get like the second or third copy of that card or something like that. And it worked so well with that. And then Tony was kind of me just wanting to have a high combat rogue in there. Like I'd been wanting to put that high combat rogue in there for a while. There were a couple different options, and it just made sense to go with Tony. And then what else?
Patrice?
Yeah, I mean, Patrice was kind of also similar to Luke, I think was kind of on theme, where like we're talking about different dimensions and different realities, and her whole backstory deals with this Watcher from another dimension. So it kind of fit, I think, and like, I don't know, something about her backstory just screamed Dreamlands to me. Right. And obviously we'd already done Carolyn, so Tommy was a good fit for the themes for the player cards that I wanted to do. I wanted to do a lot of Guardian cards that were all about that sort of paladin archetype of I'm going to protect my teammates, and I'm gonna be in the way and take all the hits for people and stuff like that. And so Tommy was the best fit sort of emotionally for that. Like he's all about like, I'm gonna be a hero, here I go.
Yeah.
Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah, essentially.
So, how do you? I mean, we had already kind of started Myriad before, but I'm always kind of curious from just a purely mechanical standpoint, how you kind of deliberately decide, okay, this is what we're going to develop for this campaign, because I know you, and you're way more the person that has far more ideas than time to actually devote to fleshing them out. So how do you as a person pare that down and decide what to focus on?
Usually for me, I find that when I can't stop thinking of a particular idea, that's a good sign that it's something that, I should really cling to. You know what I mean? And for me, that was the bonded cards. I had kind of played around with the idea in the Circle Undone, obviously, because you have the Hollowed Mirror and the Occult Lexicon in there. And then when I started working on the Dream Eaters, I was like, all right, I want to do a lot more of these, because this idea clearly has a lot more going for it than just these two cards. There's so much more that we can do with it. And that's when I decided to codify it into a keyword and do more with it, and then use those prior cards as like a preview, right? But yeah, mostly it's just because it was one of those things where it's like, I just can't stop thinking about these bonded cards, and I had written down all kinds of ideas, like, oh, what about this kind of card that turns into this, and like, it couldn't get out of my mind, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And then for Myriad, Myriad was just a cool idea that I had on top of that, where it's like, it doesn't have anything to do with bonded per se, but because bonded cards were already doing 3-ofs in some ways, right? Like you have the Hollowed Mirror that brings 3 copies of Soothing Melody, and sometimes it's the other way around, like the shards, the shards of Onyx that turn into the pendant. That was when I was like, oh my goodness, these work really well together, where I can have Myriad cards that are 3 copies, and then so it just kind of worked out that way. But for the most part, like the player cards don't have any bearing on the encounters, and vice versa. They're usually pretty distinct from one another. So it's not like I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing Dreamlands, what do I want to do for player cards? Like, it's not usually like that, aside from like themes sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah so I guess kind of piggybacking on that line of thought, do you kind of have a slush of design that you've already done? And this doesn't necessarily have to apply just to mechanics. I would assume this would apply to investigators too, where like you've already designed the investigator, and then you just kind of decide where you're putting it in.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where I just have more cards than I have room to put them into any given product. So a lot of times Like we have this big folder that's just full of card designs that will probably never see the light of day. And, most of them haven't been tested, so they're probably all trash. But that folder has like hundreds of cards in it. And some of them are investigators. Some of them are investigators that I've, designed and haven't just found a good place for yet. But a lot of cards usually go through many iterations, like many iterations before they settle on a final form. So even those investigators that are in there, they're just like very raw,
And where is that folder kept?
On a server that you can't access, Sean.
Challenge accepted.
It was worth a shot.
Yeah.
So talking about a few scenarios, or moving on to scenarios within the Dream Eaters, Search for Gadath is hands down probably my favorite scenario in this cycle so far, though I have not played Weaver of Dreams. Did you play a ton of early 90s point-and-click adventures? Because this feels like one. Like King's Quest.
I very did, yeah. All the old Sierra games.
Yeah, like Quest for
came
Glory.
on like a 8.5-inch floppy or 12-inch floppy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I played it. I played a lot of those. Alone in the Dark actually was the one that I played a lot of, which isn't 100% like the King's Quest games, but it's pretty similar. It's about as close as you can get to be a horror game in that like era. And I was very young when Alone in the Dark 1 came out, and it creeped me out so much. You start in like the attic, like you go into the house and you can see the character walking up into the house from the attic, from like the window, like there's someone watching you, and you go up to the attic and then you fight. It's just like a normal zombie. And I could never get out of that room because I got too scared and I would turn it off. And so like that was and eventually I obviously went back, and Resident Evil 2, like the original Resident Evil was like that for me too. But anyway, yeah, I did play a lot of those point and click adventure games. So yeah, I definitely took a little bit of that, took inspiration from those kinds of games, in the sort of like they're non-linear and you can kind of go wherever you want to go within the confines of the world and make your own path,
Did you find this scenario more challenging to design because of the openness?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, we went through a lot of different iterations, probably more iterations of this scenario than any other scenario, just because I wanted to get that feeling of the world is huge, the Dreamlands is enormous, and there's so many places you can go, but I also didn't want it to be like, all right, here's setup, put these 30 locations into play, and you're like, oh geez, like that would be awful. So I wanted to get that feeling, but I didn't want to overburden the player with complexity. And eventually we settled on this sort of, there's different acts, and each act is its own little setup, and you kind of go from continent to continent, right? Or like area of the Dreamlands to another area, and set everything else up again.
And not necessarily having all 5 continents out at once at the beginning of the game.
Right, right. And also like that, like the scale is so large. It's the largest scale we've ever done for a game in Arkham LCG. So I didn't want it to feel like, it just takes one action to get from like, Ulthar to the Forbidden Lands. It's just like, no, that I'm like stretching it a little too thin there. Yeah, exactly. So I wanted that like when you're going across the ocean, I wanted that to feel like you're making a big move. You're not able to quickly get back to where you were.
Do you think, or do you know, is there an optimal path through the islands, through the continents, or one that you always follow? Is there?
If there is an optimal path, I don't know it. I think
Fair. Okay.
I feel like we did a pretty decent job of making it so that you can kind of go in any order you want. That being said, I know certain acts are going to be easier or harder depending on the investigators that you have. The Forbidden Lands is pretty dangerous in general, lots of enemies and stuff. So if you're not good at evading enemies or avoiding them, then you might have more trouble there. Whereas the east, the
Minar,
Celifay, and like that area. That's the one that takes the longest.
The Timeless
So
Lands.
if you're the Timeless Lands,
yeah.
thank you. If you're going a bit slowly, if you take more time to get set up, you might have more trouble there just because you might get stuck there for so long that you can't go very many other places. But if you're playing a really fast and aggressive deck, you might be able to tackle that pretty quickly. So yeah, I'm sure there probably is an optimal path, but I don't know what it is if there is.
I'll let you know when Iron Man prep begins. For,
oh yeah. Oh sure. There you go. You're gonna break that down like like a mad scientist with a chalkboard, just like
into its disparate elements.
Yeah. There are spreadsheets and flowcharts and decision matrices. Matrices.
Do you have a favorite card that came out of that scenario?
Favorite encounter card?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think so. We used a new artist for maybe four of the locations in that scenario, because I went to my art director, Jeff Lee Johnson, who by the way is fantastic. And I was like, yeah, so for this scenario, I really want these locations to feel like marvelous and wondrous and awe-inspiring and beautiful, but also with a tinge of creepiness to them, right? Mm-hmm. And he went out and he found a bunch of artists to do some of those locations. And in particular, of course, I need to look it up because I don't remember the artist's name off the top of my head. But the city, the nameless, what is it called? The city that appears on no map. Mm-hmm. Right?
That is.
Yes.
Was that the really psychedelic one?
Hai
Which appears on no map? Yeah, oh yeah. Yes, Hai Huang.
Hai Huang.
I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
Me too.
The city which appears on no map, and also Kadatheron and Hazith Clegg, they're all done by this artist, and oh my goodness, were they knocked out of the park, because they are perfect, like utterly perfect in terms of the way I wanted to see them presented, the way that they're described in the source material and that sort of thing.
If there were ever to be a playmat from this scenario, I think city which appears on no map.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, and the Temple of Unattainable Desires. Oh, yeah. That one is crazy scary.
Mm-hmm. There's some seriously good art out of this scenario. I'm just looking through the cards again.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really just fantastic. And then also just the cats. The cats of Althar. Can't go wrong. The fact that if you're on their good side, they appear to slow you down by demanding you pet them is probably my favorite little bit.
That doesn't surprise me. So then kind of moving on, let's, I guess, keep on this path of the campaign. So Dark Side of the Moon. So we finally got like our first true stealth mission.
Yeah.
So where did Alarm come from?
I don't know specifically where it came from or if it came from like a one thing. It was more just like the mood that I wanted to feel like you're kind of sneaking into enemy territory and rescuing someone and then trying to escape. So it just made sense to have something there that obviously the game already has ways of having enemies engage you and be disengaged from you, and you can sneak by enemies in that sense. But in a broader sense, I wanted to give the feeling that, they're onto you more and more as the scenario progresses. And if that gets too bad, if that gets too high, then you
get murdered by cats.
Trouble. Yeah, exactly. Then you get murdered by cats. But cats from Saturn.
Space cats.
Space cats. So I think originally it might have been like a global thing. But I think it made more sense to be like investigator specific, so that one person could be having trouble with that, and everyone else have to bail them out.
And we have to have words, Matt.
How's that? Why is that? What did I do?
You shuffled the discard pile into the encounter deck more times than I'd care to count. Which normally I don't mind so much, but when Ancient Evils is in that deck, I'm like, come on!
Yeah.
I had a
but
game...
I think it's important for a scenario like this where you're where you don't know exactly how much time you're going to have, because if you can map that out completely, like, all right, we're going to have 3 turns left, I'm going to do this and then that, then it's maybe too easy to plan out your moves.
Mm-hmm.
And when Ancient Evils is in there, like in Lord of the Rings, shadow cards are a thing, right? Mm-hmm. So you never know how many times you're going to draw a single card. If there's like 3 of them in the deck, it's not like, oh, well, we're going to draw 3 copies of it because we're gonna get through the deck, and there's gonna be 3 of them. In Lord of the Rings, all 3 of those could show up as shadow cards, or none of them could, and you could recycle the deck and have 2 more pop out. So that's one of the things that has been, I wouldn't say like a struggle, but just something to keep in mind with Arkham, where sometimes I do want it to be a bit more varied how many times a copy of a card is going to show up.
Sure.
And since we don't have shadow cards, this is really the easiest way to do that, is to have the encounter deck get shuffled in every now and then.
Makes sense. Still hate it, though. It's fine.
I
It's
know.
fine. I suppose it's not supposed to be pleasant.
I had a campaign going where it was either 6 or 7 ancient evils over the course of the game, some of which we canceled, but it was just like an onslaught of big tentacles exploding. So
if you're going fast, if you're doing well Doom-wise, then Ancient Evils, it's like a free draw.
yeah, it sure is. If you're
That's a topic for an entire episode.
Yeah,
if you're
it's a
doing
topic
well.
for an entire episode where I'm on and I say that, and then you all yell at me for an hour.
No, because I think you're more right than most people are willing to admit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of people say, like, oh, Ancient Evils is the worst card in the deck, but you kind of have to go back and think, like, how many times do you lose to Doom? And how many times do you lose to damage? And if you lose to Doom a lot, then yeah, obviously that's going to be a problem, a hurdle that you have to face. But if you're someone who maybe you only lose to Doom like once in a while, or like once per campaign, maybe Ancient Evils is a free draw for you, because you're going pretty fast, and you're building decks that are very aggressive and quick, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel in True Solo that Ancient Evils sometimes just feels like a pass. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Like, oh, good, no enemy. Whew.
Yeah. Unless it causes the agenda to advance and you thought you had that one last turn. That's when it hurts. But
as with almost every encounter card, it depends on the investigator that you're playing. Mm-hmm. Because if you're playing an investigator who requires a lot of time to set up, and a lot of time to get going, and you fail a decent amount of tests because you're having that trouble early on, then yeah, Ancient Evil is going to be a big problem for you, because you're taking a lot more time than you normally would. Mm-hmm. But if you're playing, like, I don't know, all skills Silas or something, and you can just, like, all right, turn 1, I'm rolling, here we go.
Yeah. Bye.
Yep.
Yeah. So then I guess Where the Gods Dwell is the last one. I've yet to put up a W against this one, and I know that it's usually a mission of yours to make the ultimate scenario in any campaign a scorcher. Your opinion, which is your own personal opinion, and you have a very unique viewpoint on the game. In your opinion, where does Where the Gods Dwell rank among the ultimate scenarios for the campaigns in difficulty?
All right, so, well, spoilers, because there is the sort of additional act in Where the Gods Dwell that you might not see. So if you without that, I think it's actually a little bit on the easier side compared to like Forgotten Age and Carcosa and...
Yeah, but you don't really win if you don't see that.
Sure you do.
Really?
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
It's more akin, in my mind, it's more akin to, like, the additional part of the Forgotten Age at the end, if you forge your own path. You know what I mean? It's just not quite that pronounced or that long. But yeah, it's just this little, like if you did things in just the right order, you get this the truth, right? It's kind of like oh man, I don't want to spoil things. It's kind of like the end of, if you've played Persona 4. If you haven't played, you won't really know what I'm talking about. But if you've played Persona 4, you'll know what I mean. Where there's, like, the ending, and then there's the true ending, and then there's the true ending, and then there's, like, the true ending, and you're like, well, how deep does this go? I peeked the microphone, but you get the idea. That's kind of the how I wanted it to feel. So if you do that, then it's very hard, because there's this additional thing.
Sure.
Yeah. It also kind of depends on player count, I think, because this one has some very interesting multiplayer shenanigans going on.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I do know exactly what you mean. I've only played it two-handed, so that's my only keyhole into this.
But you're playing
it
two-handed by yourself, right?
Yes, two-handed by myself, which plays a really big effect on what Hidden is doing in that scenario.
Well, but it's even more so if you're playing with two actual like physical people, because as opposed to Ghost, because you have this element of secrecy and not being able to explain what you have or what you need to do to advance. So it adds an extra layer of difficulty on top of that.
Oh yeah. Like playing it two-handed, knowing what each investigator had, it almost breaks it. So I'll be very interested to see what our Iron Man strategy ends up being for that one, because there is.
If I wiggle my eyebrows like this,
there's a lot you can't technically account for if you're really adhering to the spirit of Hidden and Peril.
Mm-hmm.
Please do. Please adhere to it.
Which that was one thing I know when we were planning for Carcosa, and I think the table talk rule, and I know it's in the FFG co-op games, like, oh, you can't talk about what's in your hand. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, I understand why it's there. It's for people people quarterback a game, and it just makes it more, like, also some people kind of like to role play a bit in this game, and I get that. Yeah. But I was like, I never play with that rule. But I was like,
well, even in Arkham, it is more of a suggestion in Arkham. It's not a hard and fast rule like it is in Lord of the Rings.
Right.
It's more like, you should do it this way, and we like it more.
I remember there was those old playthroughs and of some guys playing. It's like, I have a certain Istari Grey Wizard in my hand. It's like
exactly.
But when
who could it be?
Yeah. But when Hidden showed up and Peril, it's like, okay, no, that is like hard and fast. Cannot break that rule, because that is part of the game, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna have
so many of those cards are designed with the idea that you were adhering to that rule, like at its core.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because if you don't, then it makes them just completely like blank. It's not fun. You have to even hide them.
Yeah, even more so in Where the Gods Dwell than any other time.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're gonna.
And if you haven't played it yet, I won't say more than that, because it's a cool surprise, I think.
Because you can't.
Right.
Exactly. It's a terrifying surprise, is what it is.
Yes.
I'll be very, very interested to see how Iron Man planning goes. We're gonna have to talk long and deep, Scott.
Mm-hmm. This is also going to be the point where we're getting quite tired.
Yes.
Day, right? Like this is scenario 7. This is when like wires start getting crossed and stuff, and
it is technically only 4, depending on how we run this.
We'll see.
Yeah, but that is like a foundational decision that's yet to be made. But
yeah. So jumping to, I guess back to the real world, 1,000 Shapes of Horror. I felt kind of like that this scenario was almost 2 scenarios that got melded together. That you've got the house and you've got the stairway. Did it start as 2? And like, what was how did you make these 2? Like, it almost like it's like a 2-act play almost.
No, it didn't start as 2. And honestly, I think if the whole scenario had just been the stairway, that would have been kind of I don't know, setting wise. There's not much going on, right? It's a stairway. It's my favorite part of the scenario. Don't get me wrong, but I think if that was the whole scenario, then it might have been a little like, is that it?
Yeah.
Actually, no. Originally, in my like first draft of everything, and for the record, 1,000 Shapes of Horror was designed by Daniel Schaefer, who is another member of the card game department. He works on Keyforge, and Game of Thrones. He stepped in and designed this scenario along with a sort of initial first draft of Point of No Return, and the hospital, Waking Nightmare.
Okay.
So yeah, he did a lot of work on this cycle. You can see his name in the credits and everything. But anyway, originally it was just like, all right, let's go to the Nameless. The Nameless is a cool place in the lore, and it it fits in with the Randolph Carter story because that's part of the dream cycle. So I wanted to explore this house. That was really where it first started, and then in the story outline it was like, and then you'll find a staircase that goes down into the underworld. Boom. And then the more I thought about it, the more the staircase became like a more exciting, like not more exciting, but like I wanted it to be represented in gameplay. I didn't want you to just read about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I presented that idea to Dan, and he was like, all right, I think I could do something with that. And then like a week later, he shows me like, okay, so here's all the staircases. And I'm like, okay, and then he just picks one up and like moves it to the bottom. And I'm like, no. And he's like, yeah.
You did.
And he's like, all you gotta do is get to the bottom. And I'm like, it's all you have to do is move to the bottom. And he's like, yep. And I'm like moving the token down, and then he moves the staircase from the top to the bottom. And I'm like, you.
It's like that run up to the Bowser boss in Mario 64.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, actually, it reminds me of an old SCP Foundation sort of game, like indie game, where there's just a staircase, and it just keeps going down and down and down and down and down. And the further down you go, the more creepy things become, and you hear like breathing behind you, and you turn around, there's nothing there, and you keep going down, and eventually it's like nothing happens. The staircase is the SCP. If you don't know what SCP is, just look it up. But anyway, that's what it reminded me of, and I was like, oh, so excited for that.
Quietly Googling SCP.
So SCP Foundation is basically like a creepypasta repository of like, there's this government agency. Yeah, I'm surprised you don't know SCP. It's like this government agency that goes and finds, it's a lot like Control, the video game Control, where it's like they find these entities and they like lock them up and study them. And the entities are all they're all basically creepypastas that people have written, right? Like the thing that can't move if you're looking at it, but the second you blink, it kills you and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And some of them are objects, and some of them are like, this staircase is the entity. It's just like this, and they like. Anyway, I'm going too far into it.
Interesting,
but yeah, it's fun. You should read it. Yeah.
Too far down the
I've
staircase?
seen it referenced many a times, but I've never bothered to actually look at what it means.
Yeah.
My favorite story, Matt, I'm not sure if I told you the story about me playing Thousand Shapes of Horror for the first time in a 4-player group, and Endless Descent is the card that keeps on moving the stairs down, right? We did not read the part that says, add this card to the victory display.
Oh.
And so we were going down the staircase, like, man, this is going on forever. And because we're playing 4 players, there's like 5 copies of this card in the encounter deck.
God.
And we're like grabbing one every turn. We're like, how are we supposed to get to the bottom? We actually did end up beating it. I'm not sure how, but like we were able to do it. And then afterwards, we went back and read it like, oh, that would have made things, if we just had read the whole card, that would have been, that would have been okay.
Yeah, that's rough, buddy.
That's important. That card.
RTFC noob.
Yeah, I know. My favorite phrase used against me.
Well, I mean, there's a reason it's important.
Yep.
Indeed.
So then Point of No Return was an interesting one. This is the one where I felt like, Thousand Shapes of Horror is no slouch in the difficulty department. But Point of No Return stomped me the first couple times I played it. And it's kind of a fun little, I don't want to call it a romp. It's almost like
it's a romp.
It's like the darker version of Search for Kadath, right? Where you're
it very much is. It's like the dark mirror to that scenario.
Yeah, you're like starting one place, and then the board kind of explodes out in these different areas as you explore it.
Yeah. Because similarly, the underworld has so many locations within it, and there's even many more that weren't represented in there. In fact, the entire Abyss is not in there, and the reason for that is because we already did Guardians of the Abyss, which is set in the same region of the Dreamlands, FYI.
I took my campaign that was doing this, I took that through Guardians of the Abyss when we got to this point, just because I was cool. Like, oh, okay, well, we're in the neighborhood, let's...
We're in the neighborhood. Let's drop in on Jara and see how he's doing. Yeah.
I did really appreciate Richard Upton Pickman hopping in. Now,
of course,
I've read Pickman's model. Is he referenced in other stories other than Pickman's model?
Yes, yeah, in the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath.
He is, okay.
Yeah, Randolph Carter goes down into the underworld, meets up with his old buddy Pickman, kind of describes him a bit, and similar to what Pickman does in the scenario, they kind of go around picking up like this army of ghouls to march on Kadath, essentially. Yeah. So that's where that whole mechanic and all that story text came from. In fact, a lot of different parts of the Dream Eaters follows Carter's journey in Dream Quest, not to the letter, but like, like if you read Dream Quest and then you played this, you might be like, oh, this is supposed to be that same journey. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like he goes to the moon, he escapes from the moon, he goes down to the underworld, etc., etc., all that stuff. Yes.
I've never gotten Pikmin to be more than 2 damage, but I imagine it's quite fun when you do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When Pikmin's just one-shotting enemies with his army of ghouls at his back. It's pretty cool.
And then, Matt, why don't you lead us through a discussion about Weaver of Dreams?
Sure. I hope you like spiders. Weaver of the Cosmos, FYI.
Oh, Weaver of the Cosmos, pardon me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, or Web of Dreams, we keep, that's the campaign versus the...
Right, the campaign, yeah. So, Weaver of the Cosmos is really, probably, I think, going to be a fan favorite, because the mechanics of the boss fight and how the boss works is so cool, and I really just wanted to represent this giant enemy in a way that we've never done before and that I've always wanted to do, where it's composed of multiple cards. It's not just like, all right, slap Yog-Sothoth on the table and there it is, it's Yog-Sothoth. And get this feeling of like, oh god, like how are we supposed to defeat this thing? It's just a really cool I don't want to say fight because you can get through it without fighting, but this really cool, well, like most Arkham scenarios, there's multiple paths to victory. But yeah. It's definitely a boss. It's definitely a boss fight.
Which is what you want.
More so, I would say, than where the gods dwell. Where the gods dwell, there is a boss, but it's more of a mystery and it's more of an investigation. This one is a bit more just like, oh, look at that thing.
Yeah, you know what? I want to hop back to Where the Gods Dwell for a quick second because I wanted to say something to you, but I completely forgot when we were actually talking about it. Did you ever finish the Dark Tower series?
I never did. No, I'm still in book 4. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, oddly enough, the trip through the tower and the different different directions was oddly reminiscent of the very end of the Dark Tower series.
Neat.
To me. So
I will keep that in mind when I eventually get through my 19 books that I have going. But
you won't. It's fine, though. I appreciate your intent.
Eventually I will read the Dark Tower. I'm a bit busy, but yeah.
Yeah, that is a bit of a thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that because paging through the different tower locations, I was like, okay, I could.
Yeah,
it's a little bit.
I know
Dark
someone in the live chat. Someone in the live chat mentioned that it gave them Honor Londo vibes. That's a location from Dark Souls, and yeah, totally. That was an inspiration that I had when I was reading through the Dream Quest. After rereading it after Dark Souls, and that was the vibe that I got reading it. So I wanted to represent that in the artwork as well. This sort of like lost, abandoned castle that maybe once was majestic and is now this empty husk,
Mm-hmm.
And enormous too, like the castle of the gods. Yeah,
it's got a really cool feel to it.
Thank you.
I look forward eventually to putting up a W, but
you can do it. I believe in you.
Thing is, you guys know me. I'm generally salty when I lose, but if I lose in the last scenario, it's not as big a deal because it's like, all right, at least I made a fight of it.
Yeah, you lost to Nyarlathotep. You're like, all right, you can get this one.
Okay,
you win this one.
All right, I guess. Conceded.
So Matt, you did a stream earlier this week.
I was about to say. So now I want to talk about the investigators.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
All right, investigator packs.
Yeah.
Where did this idea come from? Did it come from Marvel? Was that kind of where the like with the hero packs, or did it come from somewhere else? Or
it didn't so much come from Marvel. I think we had this idea for an intro product for a longer time than that. But when we looked at the success of Marvel and we saw how it was doing and how people liked that model, we were like, okay, clearly they've hit upon something, and we can use that as a not a starting point, because again, we'd already kind of thought about doing a product like this, but use it as a standard, right?
Right.
But obviously Arkham's a very different game than Marvel. The decks are smaller. for one thing, and experience is a thing, and leveling up is a thing. Luckily, the 60 card pack sort of product archetype that we have is honestly perfect for a starter deck with a bunch of upgrades that just come right there with it. And then, of course, in the inside the clamshell, you've got also a little strategy guide that we have written up with even some story, which is really cool. Yeah, but like, you know, before Marvel was really in development, we were thinking about doing something, and originally we were thinking about doing something more along the lines of like the championship decks in that you see in like Game of Thrones and Netrunner and whatnot, where it's a bunch of existing cards that are cobbled together into a deck, so that if you're a new player, you just pick up this deck and boom, you're good to go. Veteran players, you maybe don't need to pick it up because it already has cards that you already have if you have like a full collection. But the more we thought about it, the more we wanted to keep the entire community engaged and have veteran players have a reason to pick these up as well. And that's kind of where we came up with this what you see.
Do you think seasoned vets, quote unquote, will derive as much as an awesome experience as new players? Like, what's the...
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it'll be a very different experience because if you're a seasoned player, if you're a veteran player, you're mostly picking this up to take all of the existing cards, including the new investigators, and kind of just add them to your collection like you would a normal pack, right? You pick it up and you're like, oh, wow, this Arcane Enlightenment card would go really well in Daisy, and then you slot that in there, or Mandy, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth, and then maybe you take your other cards from your collection and slot them into the new investigators and vice versa. Whereas if you're a new player, it's really more about the experience of taking this deck and honing it and like building it the way you want to build it when you upgrade it, because there's enough experience in there to take it in different paths, right? And kind of make the deck feel like you get attached to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. And maybe it's both. If you're a veteran player, maybe you want to do both of those things with these packs, and that's cool. Maybe even buy two if you want, so that you can. I know I've heard some people say that, oh, I want to get two so I can keep one together to lend out to people, and then one to break into my collection.
First,
yeah,
it's free,
I think,
right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that. So I think every player of Arkham Horror, the card game, will find a good use for these products, and it might just be a different feeling depending on who you are.
I definitely had the idea that I was like, oh, you know, I'm just going to grab these decks and just, like you said, split them up for my collection. But I think I am going to do it the duty and honor that it deserves, and I'm going to play these decks the way you built them, and you've created them, and take them through an upgrade path and see how they feel.
Yeah.
And then
I think you'll find them to be pretty formidable. Like, they're all good decks. There are some cards that we chose specifically not to include in them, so that if you have a collection of cards, or even if you're a new player and you're buying cards as you go, like let's say you pick up the Stella deck, right? And then you're like, oh, I really like this deck and I really like this game, I'm going to pick up more stuff. And then you pick up the Corset, and then you pick up Dunwich, and then you pick et cetera, et cetera. As you're picking up these products, you're finding new cards. You're like, oh, wow, this card works perfectly with Stella, and it wasn't in her deck. I'm going to slot that in. And you feel smart for doing that, and you feel rewarded for doing that. I didn't just want to give them every answer to the question, what's a good Stella card in the Stella deck, because then I just did your job for you, really, I guess. But that being said, all of the decks are really good, and all of the cards that are in those decks work pretty well with them. You know what I mean?
Did this product have a feelings board? I have to ask about the feelings board.
Right. Not the cycle as a whole, not like all 5 of them as a whole, but each individual investigator, sure. The same way that every investigator, we want to feel different from one another and diverse. So for Winnie, for example, Winifred's deck is all about recklessly overcommitting to tests that you maybe don't need to, and like just going all in and just having that devil may care attitude that she has. So there's a lot of cards in there that reward you for committing 2-3 cards to a skill test and just going all in. And then, you know, each of the investigators feel differently in different ways. Yeah.
I also want to thank you for because I'm pretty sure I talked at the beginning of the episode about me figuring out my Black Cat deck and landing on Jim. And I'm pretty sure the day Scott and I workshopped that deck was the day before Jacqueline came out. I'm like, oh, well,
yeah.
all
I was going
right,
to say,
then.
Jacqueline would have been a perfect Black Cat. Yeah, for sure.
So I guess I'll just hold on to actually play the deck until Jacqueline comes out.
Yeah, I think you'll find that they go well together, for sure.
So, did you find that designing these, whether it was just the investigators themselves or any of the cards that came with them, was a kind of a notedly different process from your normal design process?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And there's a couple good reasons for that. One is Jeremy Zwern had just joined the Arkham team a little bit before we started working on these, so he worked on 2 of them. I worked on the other 3, but also we worked pretty closely on all 5 of them together. So that was kind of a shake up to my normal kind of design process, not in a bad way, in a good way. But also because of the way these decks work, like normally with a cycle of player cards, it's very much kind of all over the place in terms of like, there'll be a card for that's good for seekers, and a card that's good for a specific seeker, and a card that's maybe good for 3 different investigators, and a card that's good for someone, who hasn't been used in a while, whatever. But for these, it's really all about that character. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And we tried to also make sure that each of the cards in there are good for several other characters too, right? Like to call out a specific card, Get Over Here is one of the cards in Nathaniel's deck. It's also a very good Zoe card. It's also just a good Guardian card in general, but it's a fantastic Zoe card because Zoe always wants to be hunting down monsters and engaging them. Mm-hmm. And the same thing is true for all of them. They all have cards that are good in multiple different characters. There's some Stella cards that are really good for Calvin. There's some Harvey cards that are really good for Daisy and for Mandy, and so on and so forth. But really, for the most part, it's a lot more focused. It's a lot more like, this is what Nathaniel does. Every card in this deck should hit that theme. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like every card in Harvey's deck should deal with drawing cards and having a big hand. Every card in Winnie's deck should feel like it goes well with the succeed by a lot theme and that sort of thing.
Were these investigators chosen for a certain reason? Like I believe 3 of them are new to Arkham? Like, yeah. I guess. Sorry. Why did you choose these guys and gals?
Right. Yeah. So partly because of so we knew very early on they were going to be monoclass, and we touched upon certain themes for each class that, like for example, for Nathaniel, it's like, all right, we want to do a high damage investigator, someone who can take out enemies really well because that's kind of a big Guardian theme, but we wanted to do it in a different way than just play my gun and I shoot with it, or I put out my weapon and I hack with it.
Right.
For Harvey, we wanted to do card draw. That's like a big staple seeker theme, but there's really no investigator who deals with card draw. And for Winnie, of course, you got the Succeed by X theme. For Jacqueline, you've got Chaos Bag Manipulation, and for Stella, you have the Win by Failing sort of theme. So all of those are themes that we wanted to hit on. And from there, it was just a matter of lining them up with investigators that made sense. And as we were doing that, it became clear that some of the new investigators that we were already working on in the IP were perfect fits for that. Nathaniel in particular was just like, oh, for sure, like this should be Nathaniel. So we kind of worked together to figure out what those investigators would be. And yeah. There you have it.
So, with these investigators, and I know you can't comment for sure on future products and whatnot, but right. Is the noted intent that these might show up in campaigns, or are these investigators this is them as they exist in this product?
Campaigns of Arkham Horror the card game?
Yes.
They are exclusive to these products.
Okay.
So if you want Harvey Walters, pick him up here. It's not like the novellas where he's going to eventually appear. And the same thing goes for all of the other cards in these packs. Some of them are reprints. So there's some cards in them that you might already have in your collection or that you might get in a future product if you're a new player and you don't already have a collection. But all of the other cards that are new are, just meant to be from these products.
Sure.
And
okay,
I think you mentioned...
That's kind of what I was wondering, is whether they'd kind of be like the novella investigators or not.
Right. No, they are definitely not like the novellas.
I think you mentioned, too, on the stream that you Jeremy, estimate about 80% of the cards are new?
Yeah, and that's a rough estimate, but
Yeah.
I think it's about 6-ish reprints in every pack, which times 2 is 12, so about a fifth of the pack. But that does change from pack to pack, so don't take that as a hard and fast rule.
Right. I just think, I know there was a lot of people like, oh no, is this going to be like, only 4 new cards per pack,
right?
And a bunch of reprints. It's like, no, this is a significant amount of new
pleasantly
cards.
Surprised, yeah. And when I say new cards, I don't just mean brand new cards. I also mean like downgrades or upgrades of existing cards, but like at a new level that you've never seen before.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's new.
Like here's a level 0 version of this card that I think we already spoiled a couple on our website. Like there's a level 0 Disc of Insomnia, for example, in the Harvey Walters deck. So it's not like a new card, but it is a new card. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw level 0 Will of Test of Will.
Level 0 Test of Will?
Which,
from that tests your will.
Well, I was about to say, which I haven't watched the stream, but from what I can see of the text is like actually offers a will test. I'm like, all right, okay, on point.
It's so funny. I love that card so much.
Touche.
It's so it warms my heart.
honestly, if I can't see what the will test is, but if it's reasonable, I can see that just being played over the level 1 version in a lot of investigators. So
we shall see.
Yeah. So I guess kind of going through the different investigators. So sure. Harvey already existed. He's one of the older characters in the Mythos.
Yes. He's one of the most. He's one of the oldest characters in the Arkham IP. Very beloved character who a lot of people will see. He'll be familiar to them because he has existed in pretty much every other Arkham product that we've ever done.
So he's very, at least on his face, similar to one Norman Withers.
Sure, stat-wise.
Yeah.
Oh
boy, he seems fun though. Lots of card draw.
Yeah. So the thing with Harvey is there's the card draw obviously, but it's not just the card draw. It's also the hand size. That's like the big thing with Harvey, and we really wanted to push that theme and have a lot of cards that triggered if you have a big hand or allowed you to have a bigger hand. And there's nothing cooler than turning to your friends and like whipping out your 15 card hand and people are looking at you like, oh my goodness. Yeah. I've
already been playing Mandy with the dream enhancing serums, like it's just a weird feeling to have like 13 cards and be like, yeah, my hand is size 6.
Yep.
And when I saw the spoiled card, the Solano fragments, and it's like when you have is 15 or more cards in hand, I'm like, oh my god, that's going to be a thing.
Yeah. And I mean, that's more of a stretch goal than something that you can expect to do easily, but it is a lot of fun.
I know on our Discord, people are chatting about Harvey and using all the cards that were spoiled and all the cards that we know, he can have it was over 30 cards in his hand. Like there is ways through just with Myriad and all this
geez.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you're like sitting at the starting location and everyone's just staring at you like, dude.
Yeah, do something. Yeah.
Could you maybe, just maybe.
I just imagine holding my deck in my hand just as a stack of cards.
Hey, if you're playing City of Archives, it's pretty useful.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
So then, Winifred.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Winifred.
Woo. So we have our first 5 agility investigators, which is pretty.
Is that true? That's not true. Isn't Rita 5?
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right.
Rita's
Sorry,
5.
I meant in Rogue.
Jeez.
Rita.
Do you even play this game?
No. Yeah. I mean.
I'm just kidding.
To my disgrace, I think I've only played Rita through one campaign, so maybe there's that. Sorry, Ian.
But yes, you are correct. First 5 agility rogue.
Mm-hmm.
She seems fun.
She is a lot of fun. And of course, the deck includes more ways to leverage that 5 agility than before possible. So those cards will see a lot of play outside of Winnie as well, I'm sure. In, like Finn and Skids and Wendy and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. And since Nick isn't here, I'll go ahead and champion it. I love that Lonnie is going to be an ally now. She'll probably go in most Jenny decks that I build, just because. Assuming she works with Jenny.
She I would say she works really well with Jenny if you have some other cards in there to support it, and I won't say more than that, but you'll see when you see Lonnie and what she does.
Lovely.
Yes.
Lonnie was a very fun character from the Jenny novella, so I'm really glad to. I don't know, the Arkham Mythos is really kind of building out, and maybe it's just because I only really became engaged with it when I started playing the LCG, but there's just more and more things that I notice and more kind of through lines that I'm noticing. So
there's a lot more through lines than I think people expect or notice originally. Like a lot of people see like, oh, Abigail Foreman, she's from the Silas novella. And it's like, yes, you're right, but she's also in Arkham Horror 2nd Edition board game. When you go to the Orin Library, she's there all the time, and it's like, oh, Abigail Foreman talks to you. So a lot of these characters are it really blurs the lines, and it makes it feel like a living, breathing world, which is kind of the intent.
You guys ever thought about some formal way of publishing your wiki? Your like,
oh geez,
like that could be really fun.
It'd be awesome. It'd be a ton of work.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
but
that would be a lot of work.
But I know there's a lot of people, me included, who would enjoy reading that, because even just going through the Investigators of Arkham book, which is something that I never really. If you had pitched that to me ahead of time, I would have been like, that's cool, but, kind of whatever. But actually going through it, and then, I enjoyed the stories as they are, but then as those investigators continue to come out for the game, I'm like, oh, I remember that. That's a thing that happened. And
to me, though, I also love just, playing a scenario of, like, Arkham 3rd Edition that I haven't played yet or something, and seeing these characters pop up. And be like, this is hypothetical, of course, because I review a lot of these projects. But anyway, and being like, oh, it's so and so, right? I remember them from the such and such campaign, and that it's like a nice surprise when that happens.
Well, yeah, and so maybe this goes back specifically for me to like the Star Wars CCG. Where so much of what I know about the Star Wars universe comes from playing that game, because card games are just this really, really cool way of diving into the minutia of a property and starting to make those links. So I love that you guys are actually bothering to have those links be available for those who are consuming what it would take to see them.
Yeah. For sure.
So Jacqueline.
Yeah.
She's pretty sweet.
You might even call her Fine.
I wouldn't, though.
That's bad.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, her last name is Fine.
Yeah.
That's
she's
the
fine.
joke.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
She's fine. She's fine. She's really cool. I wanted to have a way to represent her psychic powers without kind of stepping on the toes of investigators that already exist. So the encounter bag manipulation was kind of like the cool way of doing that, because it also ties together some previous themes that we've already done with Mystics. So you'll see a lot of returning cards, and you'll see a lot of cards that combo off of each other, and there's a lot of really crazy stuff that you can do with her. Yeah.
Yeah, and any Mystic who starts at a 5 willpower is good, but then 3 intellect. 3 intellect is totally workable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
She's gonna be good. She's gonna be quite good.
She's gonna be very strong, and what I like about Jacqueline is, on its face, it's a good ability for a new player, because it lets them be like, oh, this is gonna be a hard test. Let me pull 3 tokens and pick one, right? But then if you're an advanced player, or like the skill ceiling is really high with Jacqueline, because you can do some crazy wonky stuff where you're like, okay, all right, I'm going to pull 3 tokens and pick one, but I'm going to use my grotesque statue to make one of those tokens 2 tokens and pick one.
And then Olive.
For one of them is going to be Olive, and then the third one is going to be Dark Prophecy. So I'm gonna pick 1 from 2, then I'm gonna pick 2 from 3, and then I'm gonna pick
one symbol from 5.
1 symbol from 5, and then from those 3, I'm gonna just like
I'll pray to God that I can succeed out of that range of options.
Well, and then you add in Recall the Future, and you name a couple tokens.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, because what's cool about it is then you're like, okay, and I'm going to do all of that with my Crystal Pendulum, and I'm going to name a number, and I'm going to name a thing, and I'm going to use Recall the Future to name something, and so that you can make it so that your prediction essentially comes true perfectly, right? Which is the goal, right?
Thematic.
And then you could use your Scrying Mirror to do that all before you commit anything.
Right, Overkill.
Yeah. Scrying, like, out of Jacqueline's, the cards spoiled for her, Scrying Mirror just blew my mind, because it's like, Premonition is such a great card. And this is basically 4 premonitions, but you have to commit to you have to commit to that action first, right? Because sometimes we're like,
yes.
Hey, you want to premonition that? Yes. And then I remember, Sean, you drew the tentacle on one of your premonitions. We're like, okay, who can use this to just do something?
Like, oh, maybe not though.
Yeah.
No, for Scrying Mirror, you have to be like, all right, I'm going to investigate, and then you pull the token, and then you're like, well, it's too late, I'm already investigating.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Oh, so awesome.
I also want to call out Azure Flame and Clairvoyance, because, with Mystics, it's an interesting game, I'm sure, from a design perspective, to continue to give them the core part of their identity, where they continue to substitute willpower for other stats, and that's how you get through the game, and not just have everything be shriveling butt.
Right. Yeah. And that especially with this one, because I want it to be something that is simple enough for new players, that it's not like Shards of the Void or something where it's like it's very complex for a new player to understand. It's about it's exactly the same complexity level as Shriveling was to a core set player. But it's just different enough that different characters might take Azure Flame over Shriveling and vice versa. Or maybe you take both, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're going like, oh, I'm going like full combat gym, now you have like 8 combat spells that you can take, you know what I mean? And that's exciting.
For me, the first thing I thought of when I saw these 2 cards, I was like, oh, cool, they're like reverse Rite of Seeking and Shriveling. But then I realized, no, wait, these are the Rite of Seeking and Shriveling cards you take when you're playing Expert, because there's just less +1s and 0s. So your chance of actually getting pinged by them, even though they work the exact same way as Rite of Seeking and Shriveling, though, like Rite of Seeking and Shriveling don't scale as much through difficulties, because there's always 5 or so bad stuff tokens.
It also depends though on like what other card you're using. Like if you're using a lot of the seal cards from Forgotten Age to seal like special tokens, like if you're using Protective Incantation and Chthonian Stone to seal symbols, then all of a sudden Azure Flame and Clairvoyance are worse.
Yes.
But if you're using like Crystalline Elder Sign to seal a +1, then boom, Shriveling is better. You know what I mean? So,
Azure Flame.
Azure Flame is better. Yeah. So it's all about knowing what your deck is trying to do and trying to take the most advantage of that. And it's also like what they do to you when they fail. So like, for example, if you put Clairvoyance in Agnes, you've got the Horror, and then Shriveling in Agnes. You don't want to use Azure Flame because that's damage. You know what I mean? You just want everything that deals you Horror is what you want with Agnes.
And maybe these are the spells too that Mateo takes, because if his Serpent comes out and seals the Elder Sign, or if
they fail less.
Yeah, or if you have.
But at the same time, also,
sorry, good.
If your Mateo deck is all about trying to pull the Elder Sign as often as possible, then you don't want these. So there's a lot of thought that can go into such a minor change, which is really cool. Yeah.
So Stella.
Yeah.
Stella seems fun.
Yeah, Stella's really fun. Stella's another character like Jacqueline, where the ability by itself is easy enough for a new player to understand, and just very good for a new player because it's like, oh, you failed the test, get your action back. It's nice, it's safe, it makes you feel safe. But if you're an advanced player, the skill ceiling for what you can do for that power is extremely high because there are some really cool combos that you can do with Stella. Like I often say, you haven't played Stella until you've like investigated, failed, played Look What I Found, discovered 2 clues, use your rabbit's foot to draw a card, play Live and Learn to do the investigation again, investigate and succeed, and then have your action back.
And you still have
on top of all that. Yeah, and you still have 3 actions. It's just like, but like that's a very advanced combo, obviously.
And you commit Take Heart to the first test.
Right.
So,
and
yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah.
Also, I don't appreciate your inclusion of the civic trait.
Yeah. And the chosen trait is new as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or because we've had cursed.
Right.
Also, she's 8 and 8, so she is just robust.
Yeah, she's tank. You can definitely survive. Get it? Because she's a survivor. Okay.
So she has the highest stats, like health and sanity in the game now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because the Dunwich had 15, and the other ones have 15 too. Harvey and
they all have 15 as well.
Yeah, still 16. Hooey. Yeah, I'm really excited to play Stella. She's another one that I think kind of like Azure Flame and Clairvoyance, like her whole thing about failing forward, I think is going to feel like this is something I'm going to take on hard or expert. Just not even if I'm like, not just because of the fail forward aspect. Like if I forget all of that and I'm just playing like a normal, what I would do in hard or expert, I'm going to fail some tests, and just being able to gain an extra action because of that. I find even like just
you're
that.
You're gonna fail tests.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
it's like Ursula, right? You're gonna move, so you might as well get never action. Yeah.
And from a new player perspective, like, what a great way to teach people Survivor. Like, I feel I've been out of the Facebook group for a while, but I feel like in a lot of the wider public forums where there's a lot of new players who are very vocal, Survivor gets a really, really bad shake as far as people valuing what they can do. And I guess from my perspective, Survivor's a really good class. So I don't know why. Yeah. My only guess is that people just never really engage with what Survivor's trying to do in a way that makes them understand it. But like,
I think mechanic maybe it's because, sorry to interrupt, maybe it's because Wendy is a bit trickier to play. But I think Stella is a perfect example of a great like new player Survivor character because she's really well rounded, can deal with most aspects of the game pretty well. Still has that 4 agility for staying away from monsters, which I think is part of the Survivor theme for the most part. But I just think that she's going to be a great new player experience for sure.
I thought you were going to say, Wendy's kind of, tricky to figure out, and then Calvin exists. So,
well, I'm just referring to like other starter packs, right? Yeah. And by other starter packs, I mean the one other starter pack.
Yeah.
The core set.
All those other like starter things we have. Yeah.
Wendy's ability is similar to Jacqueline in that it's really helpful for a new player because you can just like, oh no, that's bad. It's a luck mitigator, right? But her stats can often make for trouble if you're playing by yourself, especially. It's very hard for you to like take down boss enemies and stuff as Wendy. Stella doesn't quite have that same problem. Yep. Although I would say that Stella's biggest weakness is just succeeding at things. Like, you get a lot of stuff back for failing, but sometimes you just need to succeed at a test, and she's no Winifred. She can't just commit 8 cards to it and be like, yeah.
Right.
Also, I'm sure it's a portent to other things in her deck, but like the design of Quick Learner, where your first action gets +1 difficulty, and then your third action and beyond gets -1 difficulty. Like, oh god, that just sets a pace for playstyle like nothing I've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, And that's a 4 experience card, so it's a bit tricky. But by then you've got a few games under your belt. By default, if you're a new player, you've played 3 times maybe, and you pick up this card and you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. You know what I mean? Yeah. Get what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
And let's not just breeze over the fact that this is a survivor card that is more than 3 experience.
Yeah.
And it's also not in beta.
Yeah, we did it. Matt, was this a bittersweet thing to finally break that 3 XP barrier?
No, so it's something that I think players have clamored for a while, but I wanted it to be special, right? So there are a couple cards in this pack that are above 3 experience, but it's still going to be very rare when it happens. Mm-hmm. And I think, I can't say any more than that.
All right.
But I think players will enjoy them a lot.
So, out of the 5, who would you say, just off the cuff, is the strongest, and why is it Harvey?
I think that's really tough because they all are stronger in different areas of the game, right? Specifically, Nathaniel and Harvey are real powerhouses. They are extremely powerful,
right,
at the one thing that they do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Harvey's fantastic at drawing cards and investigating. Nathaniel's really good at punching monsters till they die.
Yeah,
but
punching monsters and then punching them again.
Yeah, exactly. Outside of that sphere of influence, they've got some cards in their upgrades, of course, that can take them in different directions. There's some cards in Nathaniel that let you discover clues. There's some cards in Harvey that let you actually deal damage and stuff like that. But for the most part, that's what they do, and they're really good at it. Winnie, Jacqueline, and Stella are a lot more well-rounded and can be taken in different directions to suit different needs in your party. So if you're running Stella and then Rex Murphy and Mandy, right? You can upgrade Stella to be more of a combat character to take that role. But all 3 of them are good at flexing different into different aspects of the game. Which one is most powerful, therefore, is kind of a impossible to answer question, right? Because I would say that obviously Nathaniel's going to be the best at combat and Harvey's going to be the best at investigating. There's not much that's going to change that. The other 3 are a lot more versatile. Jacqueline is a especially good support character because her ability can be used on other people. So while she's totally good solo in a 4-player game, she is crazy good. Similar to Min, where it's you can play them solo, but if you play her with a group of players, you'll find a lot of cool uses for her ability and her other cards.
So piggybacking on that question, when you were throwing these decks together and kind of looking at the different spread of cards and the different abilities, you mentioned Nathaniel and Harvey kind of have a little bit more specialty. Are these decks kind of meant to function in true solo and multiplayer, or was there kind of more of a specialist focus to them, or kind of how did you approach that?
All of them are meant to... I mean, every investigator in Arkham Horror, the card game, is meant to be perfectly fine solo. Or multiplayer, right? None of them say, only play this with other people. Some of them are a bit stronger with other people. I find Tommy and Min, for example, to be really good support investigators in a group. But you can play any investigator in the game by yourself. You might struggle with certain areas, and you'll have to build your deck to compensate for that. And in our little strategy guide that is included in each of these packs, we go over that. So, for example, with Nathaniel, you're going to struggle to get clues. That's just, if you're playing by yourself and you're playing Nathaniel, you're going to struggle to get clues. So we offer suggestions on how you can get around that. Same thing for Harvey. You're going to have trouble with enemies. For Winnie, you're going to have trouble with treachery cards because her 1 willpower is going to get in the way, and so on and so forth. So, does that answer your question,
I mean, I think for the investigators, for sure, it makes sense. But I was just kind of curious, for the deck composition for each of these specifically was
sure.
kind of balancing them for both modes of play a specific goal, or is it just kind of accepted that certain people are just not going to be good at certain things?
It's definitely a goal. I mean, like, the upgrades have different paths that you can take them. And some of them are about doubling down on what they're good at, and some of them are about shoring up weaknesses. And you can I like to, instead of like planning out your deck ahead of time fully, I think one of the things that I want to encourage more is this sort of reactive experience decision making, where it's like, man, we had a lot of trouble with clues last game. I'm going to pick up lesson learned because it lets me get clues, even though I'm not like the clue getter. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I think that that's a crucial element of the game that these decks are meant to teach you, that are designed to teach you. That, like, if you're struggling with aspect A, like taking horror or whatever, here are some cards that'll help you do that or deal with that. And that's I think important because it not only just teaches new players, but it gets them excited about the idea of deck building. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Is there, now that we kind of like went over that, is there a pack you would recommend? Like, I'm playing at a store with some friends, a person comes over, hey, what's this game? I want to buy a pack for a super brand new player, possibly even a player who isn't really into board games. Is there one you would tell players to kind of direct them towards?
No, I don't think there's one that I would specifically point out. I think the whole point of having all 5 of them out there at the same time is, like, take the pack, flip it over, read about the character, and pick the one that you think you'll enjoy the most.
Okay.
If you're the kind of person who wants to punch Night Gaunts in the face, pick Nathaniel. Like, you're gonna have fun.
Right.
If you want to play like this kind of reckless daredevil, devil may care sort of character who goes all in on skill test or whatever, obviously Winifred's going to satiate that urge, I guess. They all feel very different, and I want players to pick up the one that suits their interests and their, like, desires.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite out of the bunch?
That's really tough for me because I love all of them.
Yeah.
But I think Winnie and Stella are my 2 favorites. For different reasons. Stella's very near and dear to me. Her backstory is really cool and creepy, and I just love her. She's awesome. Winnie's playstyle, I'm really proud of that character, because more so I think than any other character we've ever done, when you sit down and play Winnie, you feel like her. Like, you have the same mindset that she has when you're playing as her. And it's like, I think it was you that shared with me the GIF earlier, right? Of the picture. Yeah, the meme that was like, it's like someone pouring a latte into a mug, and it's like overflowing, and it's like the latte is, what is it? It's like the latte is Winnie, the mug is like an easy and inconsequential skill test, and then the coffee is just skill cards. Yeah, there you go. It's so funny, and it's so true. Like, there's nothing quite like being like, all right, I'm 2 up on this skill test, turning to the other people that you're playing with, I'll commit these 3 cards, and everyone's like, what are you doing? It's really fun. She's just so much fun to play.
I think you know what? It's funny. After I asked that, I was trying to think of who I like the most. I love Stella's story, especially like that whole thing of, she finishes her route and she's got this letter to her every single day from this house down the street, and it's a creepy house. And
it's not just the creepy house; it's the creepy house that, like, whispers her name to her.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
yeah.
It's just cool.
But
very mysterious.
And Winifred is the first one I'm like, I really want to play this one. And Winifred is the one you guys spoiled her entire, like, we have her signature and her weakness. Yeah. And people have already, of course, proxied it because that's what players do.
That's what you do.
And I'm just, and I'm just throwing together these cards, and I'm like, I think the phrase I used was, I'm going to power a light bulb with the amount of times I'm going to cycle her deck. Like, like it just...
Oh, yeah.
Because it's once per action.
It's once per test, yeah. So you can do a test, commit 2 cards, draw a card. Do another test, commit 2 cards, draw a card. Yeah, it's crazy.
Plus, you add in like the upped manual dexterity or normal manual dexterity, and now you're like, oh my goodness, and lucky cigarette case, and oh my goodness,
yeah. And if you're playing with the full collection, you can throw in Daredevil,
yeah,
yeah,
which features Winnie,
right there in the flavor. Love it. Mm-hmm. That was cool. I am really glad that we got to do that.
Wait,
but
what?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
I hadn't caught that yet. No,
it's a biplane, and
the flavor, basically the image for Daredevil depicts Winnie's backstory, and the flavor text is, "You're a maniac, Winnie. I know, isn't it wonderful?"
Yeah,
perfect.
I'm so pumped to play Winnie. I can't wait to see the rest of her pack. I think she might be the number one. I'm waiting for the pack I'm most excited about.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah. Oof.
So did that flavor text come before you knew that you're going to be able to make her a full investigator, or was that you planting a seed?
So as you know, we work on a lot of stuff simultaneously. So these packs were already in development when Dream Eaters was in development. And obviously Dream Eaters wrapped first because it's out and you're playing it. Mm-hmm. But we already knew that Winifred was in the pipeline, and so when I wrote the art brief for Daredevil, I included those details and then wrote the flavor text to go along with it. I didn't, at the time, know exactly what Winnie's ability was going to be, but I knew that I wanted it to work with Daredevil.
But you knew her spirit.
Yes, exactly. I knew it. I knew I wanted it to do with committing cards, so no matter what the ability ended up being, Daredevil would work with it, right?
Yeah.
And it ended up being absolutely perfect. So, yeah.
I think maybe last question on this, Sean, sure. Unless you have any more, but this was actually from chat. Are these decks taboo compliant currently, as far as you know?
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, don't correct me right now because you won't know, but correct me later if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that none of the cards in these decks are any cards that are on the taboo list. Okay. So it just neatly dodges the issue altogether.
Right.
Like, the machete is not in Nathaniel's deck, so you don't have to worry about whether it's taboo compliant. If you're using the deck just by itself, boom, you're fine.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Aw, Winnie seems so perfect for Double or Nothing.
Yeah.
But that's one of those cards that if you have the full collection, then you're like, oh, that's so good, just throw that right in. You know what I mean?
Quick thinking.
Yep. Yep. For sure.
Oh, it's going to be so good.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Innsmouth.
Yeah.
We should talk to the extent you can about Innsmouth.
I have spoken to marketing, and there are some things I can talk about and some things I can't.
Excellent.
So, as per usual.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to go out and just read Shadow over Innsmouth because that is like the cornerstone Lovecraft story that was actually written about this setting.
For sure.
So aside from that, what other influences were there on kind of the lore, the setting, the tone, kind of coming forward here?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously Shadow over Innsmouth is like, not going to say required reading, but if you're going to read something to prep,
I think that's
to prepare for Innsmouth, yeah. And I'm not in the same room with you to high five you, but Dark Corners of the Earth was a huge inspiration for me. Not inspiration, but like, I love that game, and the feel of like wandering through the town, the decrepit town of Innsmouth, is something that I wanted to capture in card form. So for sure, that game. But aside from that, really, I think the Shadow over Innsmouth is such a crucial element to the narrative that I think that, you know, that's really the one thing that I can mention. Yeah.
So so you don't necessarily have to comment on specific things about this cycle, but
yeah.
You as a developer, as a person, as a consumer of literature, what do you think are the most interesting or captivating things out of Shadow over Innsmouth?
It's the town of Innsmouth. Like the city, or not really a city. The town of Innsmouth is almost a character in and of itself, in the same way that like Arkham is a character. Like, it feels like a living, breathing place. But like not in a good way. It's just got this ominous feeling to it. This this mystery element that like if you're an outsider to Innsmouth, you arrive and you don't really know what's going on, and everyone is looking at you like you're the intruder. You know what I mean?
Like you're not a fish.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I wanted to capture that feeling of mystery, that feeling of you being out of your element. You know what I mean?
Okay, so I know there's lots of kind of backlore aside from Shadow over Innsmouth. Anything that you would recommend that players look into or read to kind of prepare or lay a baseline to catch all the references that you've laid in?
Nothing specifically that I would suggest that they read or watch or anything like that. But I will say that this campaign, it's called the Innsmouth Conspiracy for a reason. And part of that is I want this campaign to, more so than any other campaign I've ever written, this one has more mysteries that you have to like dig into. So I think that the feeling of this campaign is going to be a lot more like if you're paying close attention, and if you are getting all of the additional, there's like lots of stretch goals in this campaign in terms of like things that you can accomplish. And if you're getting all of them, you're getting a bigger picture of the story. So I think experience will vary a lot with this campaign, with people getting to the end and being like, I don't really get what was going on. And someone else being like, oh, you must have missed X element, you know what I mean, of the narrative. So yeah, like I really wanted this campaign to feel more like any, like in any other campaign, like a movie that you have to rewatch 3 times. You know what I mean? In the same way that like Memento was a movie that like you watch it the first time and you're like, whoa, okay. You watch it the second time, you're like, okay, I get it now. You watch it the third time and you're like, now I'm seeing all of the references that I missed. You know what I mean? All of the bits that I missed that made everything make sense. That's kind of how I want this campaign to feel, where the first time you play through it, you're like, that was cool. I liked it. Second time you play through it, you're like, oh my goodness. You know what I mean? So hopefully that works out the way I wanted it to. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Matt, with no explanation whatsoever, please suggest 4 investigators taken to Innsmouth, either because of story or mechanics, but don't say which, and no reasoning. I just want you to tell us 4 to go in with, and let us think and stew about why you told us those 4.
Oh god. And then like no matter what 4 I pick, people are going to do it, and then they're going to be like, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
So obviously I can't pick the ones that are in the box. Right.
Yeah. Whatever's been released or announced.
So this is just talking about characters that are already released. So obviously, use the new investigators. They're fun. Stella, Jacqueline, Nathan. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I would say Jim, Mateo, Silas, and Zoe.
Okay. Silas, unsurprising.
No explanation. No explanation, but those are the 4 that I would say. Okay. Yeah. There's one other thing that I can say.
Oh, please tell us.
Yeah. There's something else that I can tell you.
Do go on.
About Innsmouth. It's gonna have something that we've never done before in any Arkham Horror the card game product since the core set.
Okay,
that is new tokens.
Are they fish tokens?
I'm not going to tell you what tokens they are.
They're fish tokens.
You'll have to find out for yourself.
They're totally fish tokens.
No, they're bait and fish tokens. You have to get the
Wow. Double bonus when you seal them.
Yeah. Oh my
god. Yeah, hopefully we will have new information about that in the future. I mean, obviously FFG Live is, if you haven't heard, we're not doing any more FFG live streams for a little while, for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. But hopefully we can still do something to announce more about Innsmouth in the future. We'll see.
So what you're saying is we need to go buy more coin capsules if we use those for the Chaos bags?
It depends on whether they're Chaos tokens or not.
Oh.
You just have to keep an eye on our website to find out what kind of tokens they are.
You said new tokens, not new Chaos tokens.
I didn't say a new Chaos token. I said new tokens.
It's okay then. Are they? Oh, wow. All right. Wow, that is even more intriguing.
Maybe they are fish and bait tokens.
It's just 30 new resource tokens with no additional mechanics.
It's just slightly different art. It's like
No, same art, exactly the same.
Slightly water stained on the bottom because they're on like God. It's Innsmouth is a port town, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Awesome,
excellent
word.
All right, well, I think that's gonna cap our actual Arkham discussion for the night, Matt. Unless there's anything else burning that you wanted to tell us, that was quite a scorcher you just laid on us.
No, that's pretty much all I can say. I'm excited for. I mean, honestly, the amount of stuff that is coming out is pretty crazy. I think this is a very, very healthy time to be an Arkham Horror, the card game fan.
Unless your wallet's light.
Well, again, the best
minimal.
thing about this game, one of the best things about this game is it's cooperative, so you can buy at your own pace. If you don't want all 5 starter decks, just buy one of them. If you don't want any of them, just buy Innsmouth. You know what I mean? And if you only care about new player cards and you don't care about the new campaign, that's cool. Buy the new starter decks. If you like dogs, buy Barkham.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yes.
Oh God.
Exactly.
How often do I forget and then happily reminded that Barkham Horror is
Barkham
a thing
Horror
that is coming out.
is real. Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's you ever have those
so
weekends where you're like, oh, I
that.
forgot I had Monday off.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Barkham Horror. It's like the best thing I've ever done.
I still can't believe that's happening.
Dude, I still can't believe that's happened, and I got paid to do it.
Yeah. Gorvax asked, which dog should we take into Innsmouth? If you were to choose 4 dogs, no. For no reason whatsoever.
All right, well, guys, let's move it into a little bit of tentacle time. Matt, you're a busy beaver, but what have you been? What's been grabbing you in your spare time lately?
It's been a while since we did a tentacle time. With me, at least. So there's a lot.
Yeah, it was last week for us. So
You're right. Yeah. I played through most of Control, which we mentioned earlier, but Control is such a good game, and the DLC just came out, and I haven't gotten around to it. I haven't even beaten the main game, so I need to get back to that because I'm too busy playing Doom, which is so much fun and really hard. Like really hard. And I have streamed both Control and Doom on my Twitch channel before, so if you're interested, definitely take a look at that.
Where should people follow you on Twitch?
Oh geez, it is my usual handle that is tough to I believe it's got an underscore in it, so I'm just looking it up. Yeah, twitch.tv/Natsuno, so that's NATSUNO _Yoru YORU.
Excellent.
Yes. I'm not very entertaining, and I'm notoriously bad at stuff, but it is fun. And what else? Also, World of Horror. I know someone in chat mentioned that earlier, but yeah, World of Horror is a lot of fun, and definitely seems to take a lot of inspiration from Arkham, it seems to me. At least Arkham, the board game, in that, yeah, there's like locations you move to, and you draw random encounters from a deck. You have health and sanity, you have stats, you test your stats, etc. Very similar formula, but it takes inspiration from like old retro style, like 80s games and Japanese horror manga, which I'm really into. So it's honestly like feels like it was made for me. Like it's like the perfect game for me. So I've played a lot of that for a while. But then, beyond all that, obviously, I've come on the podcast a few times and I mentioned my book that I'm ready. Can I briefly plug something?
Yes.
Please do.
Okay. So I've mentioned
you
this
can't
a few
do it
times.
here. Where else?
Right, yeah. I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast that I was writing a book and then I mentioned that I finished it. Well, finally, I'm on the verge of it actually being a thing that you can get your hands on. So I don't have a specific date yet, but I have a Kickstarter that's going to go up in probably April, May. So like late April, early May. Maybe later if it takes longer to get stuff together than I would like. But I've got cover art, I've got editing a little bit, but I'd really like to do some more editing because editing is expensive and lengthy. But the more the better, right? So I'm going to do a Kickstarter, and I'm going to put that up hopefully with different tiers that you can back, as you would expect. An ebook version, a paperback version, a hardcover version, and maybe even like a limited edition hardcover with a bookmark or something. That would be really cool.
Nice.
And if you haven't heard me talk about it or rant about it, it's a fantasy horror, like new adult fantasy horror story about dreams and nightmares, and hopefully a series that I want to do more of. So definitely, if you're interested, keep an eye out. I don't have a URL to point you at just yet because the Kickstarter is not up. But if you follow me on Twitter, which is also that lengthy username, NATSUNOYORU, or just search for Matthew Newman. I'm on there. I will definitely be posting more about it in the future.
We will also talk about this, I'm sure.
Please do. Plug my stuff. Buy my book.
Yeah. Have you written much fantasy horror before at all?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or do you experience in that?
But to be fair though, writing for Arkham is very different from writing a narrative. Obviously, just in terms of the tense, the way that it's written, the style that it's written, but also, it's just a completely different beast. And, I've done a lot of creative writing before in the past, but I've never really done anything with it professionally beyond, of course, Arkham. So to be able to flex those muscles and put out something that hopefully people will like, the few people who've read it so far really liked it. So take that for what it's worth, I guess.
Nice.
I'm really proud of it. But really it's just a story that I needed to tell, more than anything. So.
I do have one question about your novel. Which investigator is getting replacement cards in this novel?
None. This is nothing to do with FFG. This is me personally as me.
Very good.
I guess I should mention the title of the book. It is called Dark Drifters: The Key and the Crescent.
And,
It's
mysterious.
mysterious.
If someone wanted to be plugged into all developments related to that, where should they go?
Again, my Twitter, I'll be definitely posting more news about it there. I know we're live and everything, but let me really quickly see if I do have a URL that's not where it's empty right now, but maybe if you go to it, it'll just say this project isn't up yet. No, it just says okay. Yeah, I don't have a URL for the project itself yet.
Sure.
Soon though. But yeah, definitely
Twitter's
go to
not
my
a bad
Twitter.
place to go.
Just search for Matthew Newman on Twitter. I'm there, and probably with multiple other Matthew Newmans, but whatever. Find the one that's a cat image.
You're telling me to find a cat image on the internet?
My profile picture on Twitter is my 5-year art. It's me.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
which
right.
we get to see in the game proper.
Some of you already did.
In the game proper.
Some of you already did.
Oh boy. Keeper mode confirmed.
Purchasable product. There we go. Haven't seen a purchasable product.
Some of you already did. No, just kidding.
Oh, God.
Oh. There's that other scorcher we were looking for.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Speaking of Innsmouth, yeah.
All right, cool. Scott, what's been grabbing your free time?
Watching my son. But not a huge amount of free time lately, but my son does like to watch me. Instead of watching, we allow him a certain amount of screen time a day, and instead of watching a Paw Patrol or some other god awful children's show, he sometimes wants me to play video games, and so I've been playing Mario Odyssey again, going back to that and finally grinding out and finding all the moons that I was like, that one's taking too long. I'll go find this easy moon. So, I loved Super Mario 64 back in the day, and would play it all the way to 120 stars and be like, okay, cool, delete save and start again. And Mario Odyssey feels like a new Mario 64, but in this generation of video games, and I just absolutely love it. So if you have a Switch and you loved Mario 64, Mario Odyssey just feels like that on steroids. So
I've heard nothing but good things, aside from the breaking of the Uncanny Valley. Doesn't Mario like break into the real world at some point and it's kind of creepy?
No, he goes to like a city that's like,
yeah,
it's called New Donk City. It's like New York City, but it's like
Donkey Kong City, right? That's like
the idea. It's you're traveling around the world in which Mario lives, and there's a big city there.
But it's not the real world.
Yeah, like it's just the world that Mario lives in, right?
Oh,
like,
but don't the people look kind of real-ish?
Oh, they're human. Like,
yeah, compared to him.
But I mean, yeah, but
okay, I'm trying to have an opinion on something I've never actually experienced myself, which is just folly. Yeah. So
it feels like you're like, oh, that's weird for about 5 seconds, and then you're like, yeah, whatever. Like it just.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different from like Sonic and like the real people who show up in the Sonic universe, and you're like, yeah, and they're totally normal. Like they don't react at all to the fact that there's a giant blue hedgehog walking around like talking to them.
Well, that's fucking suspect too, is it not?
They are as human. They're as human as like Princess Peach is human.
Right? Yeah, I mean, you got Princess Peach right in there.
Okay. Yeah. See, I thought it was more so than that.
No, she's like ever so slightly shorter than all these other humans. Like she is whatever that is, and Mario is just a short, stout one.
Yeah, one.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I suppose for my part, I too have been I've been trying to adhere to my own advice that I gave out last time, staying active during quarantine, getting outside when I can. But as far as like things that I've been consuming, finished Fallen Order. I'm in the middle of Dark Souls 3, which is fun / infuriating because it's Dark Souls. And then also started a replay of The Last of Us, the remastered version, because I never got to play the DLC that came out for that.
Oh, so good.
And that's what I've heard, and I really need to get around to it. And then the new Last of Us comes out in like May, so I need to get the hell on that and get caught up and refreshed, because I'm very excited for that game. Yeah. But I mean, that's all old news. If you haven't played The Last of Us yet, I just don't know what to tell you. I did start a new Netflix series this week that kind of slipped under my radar, and it's Schitt's Creek. Have you guys seen any of Schitt's Creek at all?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
I've only heard of it. Yeah.
Okay. And see, that's where I was at, where it's just like, I've heard of this, and apparently it's won a fair few awards. But then I had a couple separate people recommend it to me. And it's really good. It takes the classic trope of a bunch of entitled rich people being, against their will, thrust into the salt of the earth in America. And it's Eugene Levy and his son. And, oh, God, the cast is great. It strikes that perfect balance of being kind of outrageous and funny versus still being kind of realistic and believable. I just really don't have anything bad to say about it. I'm well into season 2, and it's very binge-worthy thus far. So check it out, Schitt's Creek.
Can I shout out to my own Netflix show that I've been watching?
Yes.
And by been watching, I mean finished watching. Like,
yes,
the day it came out. Castlevania.
Oh,
the new Castlevania animated series is perfect. Just utterly perfect. If you're a fan of Castlevania, please go see it. It's so good. That is all.
And the Castlevania IP at this point has evolved into being something fairly Lovecrafty adjacent, right?
I mean, it's not so much Lovecraftian so much as it takes from all facets of horror.
Sure.
Like every beast imaginable can show up in the Castlevania games and do. You know what I mean? Like ghosts, werewolves, vampires, like whatever, demons, everything, the whole lot. The TV show basically follows the story from Castlevania 3, which is Trevor Belmont's arc. Sure. But then like continues to segue into the other Castlevania games that take place around that same time period, which I think like Curse of Darkness and not Lament of Innocence, just Curse of Darkness. But anyway, my point is, it's really good.
Excellent. And speaking of, okay, I almost forgot to mention this, but Justin mentioned it in the chat, and this is very adjacent to what you were talking about. The other night, Justin and I were going to get our dream campaign finished. We were playing remotely, because, social distancing.
Right.
But I'd had a really brain-burny day at work, and I had a game in process and didn't feel like tearing it down. And I was just like, you know what? I just don't have it in me. Justin, you want to play Bloodborne, and I'll sit and watch you and coach while I drink beer?
Do it.
And we did.
Do it.
And it was great. And now
Awesome.
Justin is like past Hemwick Charnel Lane at this point, so I'm very proud.
Oh,
we sent him off on a very good trajectory, and we've caught another person in the Bloodborne net, and I'm happy about that.
Everyone should play Bloodborne. It is a masterpiece.
That's right. Y'all heard it. Y'all heard it from Matt. You can believe it when he's here.
Yay.
All right, excellent. Well, I think we'll start to wrap this guy up. Matt, thank you, as always, for coming on. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll look forward to hearing more about Innsmouth and perhaps rounding back on a few of those teasers you gave us when we have you on at the end of that cycle.
Oh, yeah. I think it's safe to say that this cycle is going to change a lot of... Well, not change a lot, but it's going to really turn heads, I think.
Fish heads? Roly poly fish heads? All right. So thank you, everyone, for joining us on episode 80 of Mythos Busters. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.